Welcome to the Casual Birder podcast. I'm Susie Buttress. As a casual birder, I take pleasure in watching the wild birds around me, wherever I am. In my show, I share the joy of birding. I tell you about the birds I've seen, speak with experts and enthusiasts, go on bird outings, and I share stories from birders around the world. As a member of the Hampshire Ornithological Society, I look forward to attending the annual Members' Day. This year, the programme contained an address by our president, Chris Packham, presentations about conservation projects and bird species found in Hampshire, exhibitions of artwork, and stands by organisations such as the British Trust for Ornithology. There was also a stand for the subgroup of women birders known as the Lady Birders, of which I'm a part, and it was lovely to meet others from our large group chat in person. One of the presentations, about the roseate terns that bred for the first time in Hampshire last year, was given by Amy Squire, one of the younger members of our birding community and my guest this episode. I invited Amy to tell us how she became interested in birding and to help us learn more about the roseate terns. We recorded this conversation sitting alongside Normandy Lagoon, part of the Lymington Keyhaven Nature Reserve on the south coast of Hampshire. Amy, we are sitting here at Normandy Lagoon on the south coast of Hampshire, looking out over, you can probably hear that black-headed gull that's calling in the background. I'm sure we'll have some more calls as we go through. We're just looking out on some lagoons with reed edges, by a little sort of canal bit. What have we already seen?
It's absolutely beautiful just sat here, and I mean Normandy Marsh is one of my favourite places anyway, and you always see so many different bird species, and already we've had oyster catchers, we've had them actually doing a little courtship display, a juvenile one as well. We've had little terns hovering above our heads and plummeting into the water, chasing after each other. There's some common terns I know sitting on the islands, making a bit of a racket, and some Canada geese in the background. Tufted ducks I've seen earlier sat down on the islands too. And there's just a whole range of species. Avocet as well, one of my favourites. I think that sums most of it up. It's just beautiful.
It really is. Oh, and we've also had the 2 Mediterranean gulls that flew over, which we heard, and we had 2 stonechats sitting on the fence right in front of us. So no doubt we'll get distracted while we're having our chat, because that's part of birding.
Exactly, easily distracted by birds.
There is quite a breeze today, so we're sort of huddled down behind a bank, and let's see how we get on. So Amy, I first saw you earlier on this year at the Hampshire Ornithological Society Members' Day, where you gave a talk all about the roseate terns that bred last year at Normandy Lagoon. So first of all, can you tell me, how did you get into birding, and what is it about birds that attracts you?
Well, growing up, I've always been outdoors with my parents. We've been always in the New Forest or by the marshes, and it's just little things that, for me, like growing up, I was always interested in everything I saw, and it started off with things like flowers and looking at invertebrates like I found under a log, but I think that passion really started to grow just for nature, and then suddenly I started to see every aspect of it. And one of my favourites was always birds. I'd always look at books and see pictures of more exotic birds like parrots and things, and I would love to go somewhere and to see these birds in reality. And I mean, I'd always go to seeing birds in captivity like scarlet macaws, but also things like, I always used to have birthday parties at falconry centres, and I'd always get to hold birds on my hand, and it was just magical. But I think one of the main things for me was I'd always just be outside, and I would pick up a bird book as well, and I would just really absorb all of the information from it. I'd look at the beautiful pictures of the birds, and I'd call myself a bit of an artist as well, so I started to draw quite young, and my main focus was drawing birds, and that kind of grew. And I'd also spend more time just doing simple things like feeding the ducks in the park, and just from that it really grew. And then I also got my first camera when I was quite young, and so we'd spend time down in the evenings after school going to, say, Keyhaven to sit in the bird hides and look out and see what we could see. Kingfishers were probably my starter kind of bird that really got me interested because of that beautiful colour they are. And they're so elusive, and trying to find them, it takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, I absolutely love the sort of electric blue when you see them go past, but they're so surprising when they stop. If you see them front on, they're orange.
I know they properly camouflage in, so it makes it a real challenge to find.
Were you drawing kingfishers, or was it more photographing them?
I would try and photograph them the best I could. I mean, like I was saying, it's always a challenge to try and find them and actually have them perched in front of you. But I did take this one really nice photo of a kingfisher that always sticks out in my mind. And I think that also kind of triggered something, the fact that I can enjoy the birds and also the artistic side of it, and then also spending my free time drawing birds like that. And when you do that, you also get to learn every single kind of thing that the birds might do. So you make observations of everything. And just, it's always grown into that passion where I can't not be birding. I've got to be outside seeing whatever I can see. And even just in the garden with just the garden birds like the house sparrows and the blackbirds and the blue tits, just watching them, there's something phenomenal about it. I've just grown up with that love for it and just being outside.
Oh, hold on, there's a oyster catcher. It was chasing, was that a redshank?
Oh, yeah, it looks like it.
A little bit of drama on the lagoon. Yeah, you make a really important point there about how it makes you observe, and I've been told that by other people who make bird drawings, that because you're focusing on specific elements of the bird for identification, it really focuses you in on things like, is that primary feather a bit longer, and thinking about where the colours are on it, or the length of the bill in relation to the head. So what age were you when you got your first binoculars?
Oh, that's a tricky question. I can't really remember, to be honest, but I think I also shared binoculars from my parents, and I reckon it was probably around maybe 7 years old, something along those lines, which was also kind of around the time I got my first camera as well.
I really like the fact that you mentioned that you enjoy seeing your garden birds as well as going out to find more exotic species, maybe. Well, when I say more exotic, I just mean things like oyster catchers and little terns and things that, I think you only really get to know if you're actually actively looking for them. I think a lot of new birders, well, definitely me, I could spot an oyster catcher because they're black and white and they've got a long red beak. But I really struggled with a lot of shorebirds because they're often brown, they're differing sizes. I might be able to get a curlew because of the long bill, but it's only in recent years I've learned that I can also see whimbrel around here, which are a similar sort of bird, but different length of bill and different call. But I think when I was much more casual as a birder, that would have just eluded me. So yeah, really taking the time to observe and getting distracted by birds like the stone chat that just turned up again on the fence in front of us.
Definitely.
So how important is actually spending time outside in nature to you?
It is extremely important for me because it does take away stress from things like exams. So like, as you were saying, I've got my mocks next week. And it's just finding that balance, because I find I get cabin fever. If I'm stuck indoors too long, I can't cope. I've got to be outside. And being able to connect with the birds and the wildlife that you see around you, it gives you a whole new perspective on life. It kind of puts you kind of in place to kind of where you are, just to think all that biodiversity around you, and you get to watch it, you kind of get to be part of it. It's just really relaxing, and it takes a time for you to actually de-stress. And I think what lots of people have at the moment, where they are stuck at home or they're not spending time outside because they don't understand, or because they're too busy, say, looking at their phones or something, they're not connecting. And we really need to connect, because it really does have positive benefits on our mental health. So even if it is just looking at birds in your garden, there's something about that which kind of draws you away from everyday life. And I mean, finding that balance is hard, because I want to spend my time out here more than I do revising, but I mean, that's life.
Yeah, you have to do like the stuff you don't enjoy so much to allow yourself time to then do the enjoyable stuff. So, do you ever just do like we are here, just sitting down and just watching?
I mean, I love to be on the move and to go from place to place to see the different habitats that attract different types of bird species. But I also do like to take the time just to sit down. Like my mum and I will often just sit down in a log in the middle of the forest or something, and we'll just enjoy seeing what is around us, or like we are here at the marshes. Just sitting down and watching the birds while you're doing something like a survey, there's something magical about it. I think that's the best part.
So you mentioned surveys there. You've obviously got quite involved in quite a range of birding activities. I would like to ask you a little bit about the roseate terns the talk that you gave at the Members' Day. Can you give me a sort of idea about how special it was to have the roseate terns breeding here last year?
It was very special because there are only 100 breeding pairs of roseate terns roughly each year, and most of those are focused in Coquette Island, which is off the coast of Northumbria. So it's amazing to think that a red-listed bird as well, a bird that's also struggling with breeding success, is starting to make home somewhere close to our home.
What's their normal range?
So their normal range is around there in the UK, which they come back to after travelling all the way to, I think it's Southwest Africa. And yeah, so they are I'm pretty sure they are quite widespread around the world with different locations. So although they're red listed in the UK, I think they are doing pretty well worldwide. But I think having them down here in the UK, especially on Normandy Lagoon, is something special, because not only last year was it the first kind of recorded successful breeding in Hampshire, but it was also most probably the first successful inland breeding of roseate terns in Hampshire, because everywhere else they've nested on offshore shingle islands, which is kind of where they love to nest, and they love to nest in other tern colonies. And that's one of the main reasons they did nest here last year, because, which is something I mentioned in my talk, roseate terns are known as kleptoparasites. So they will often steal food from other tern species. So because the roseate terns like to nest with the other terns, when they moved from the offshore shingle islands and onto the lagoon itself, I think it is what prompted the roseate terns to finally make that move to settle down here, because they had been sat on the islands previously, so hinting that they might have settled there, but they eventually did, and it was magical.
Because the roseate terns were then in a position where so many people could see them, it did put them under threat, didn't it? And I know that there were lots of volunteers last year from the Hampshire Ornithological Society who actually did shifts 24 hours a day to keep an eye on them, to prevent them from, unfortunately, egg collectors stealing any eggs, but also keeping an eye on them to make sure there are no predators around. And we'd just like to give a really big shout out to all of those people that gave their time to sort of, because sitting out here all overnight, even with a flask of coffee, is not, it's not the greatest thing to do. And the chance that you might come up against people that may be here for nefarious reasons. Really big shout out to all of those volunteers. But it was really successful. Lots of people came down, didn't they, to see the birds? Yeah,
I think they had around 30 volunteers that eventually offered to sign up. And also a big thanks to the RSPB, who also donated, I think, a portaloo and some tents and things, which they were able to use as stationing for when they did the wardening. And although I wasn't part of the wardening myself, I know that it was a very big effort from lots of people, and without them, I don't think the roseate tern success would have been a thing, because I think there was a case where they potentially did have someone that could have been an egg collector around the site, eyeing up the roseate terns. But the wardening did mean that it was successful, and egg collecting has happened in the past, where the first ever avocet breeding attempt was lost to egg thieves. So it's really devastating when that happens. So thankfully, because of the Normandy wardens, the roseate terns, they managed to have a successful breeding, and yeah, it was all thanks to them, I think.
Yeah, I think they ended up with 2 chicks that successfully fledged.
Yes, they did. The first chick was sighted on the 17th of June, with the other one being seen a couple of days later.
And the other really nice thing was that the wardens weren't just there as a guard to the birds. They actually provided a lot of information to people who wanted to see the terns. So they really acted in a sort of educational way, as well as the massive good that they did in protecting the birds as well. There is a fence all the way around the lagoon, and there's a sort of moat, I guess. It's a sort of canal, so it isn't easy to get across to there. But even so, the fence is there mainly, I think, to keep out predators like foxes. I guess there was always the worry that great black-backed gulls, which do predate on shorebird eggs. I know that a lot of avocet chicks were lost further along the coast a couple of years ago due to the great blackbacks, which, you know... Oh, what have we got?
Oh, 2 common terns. Lovely.
2 common terns just flew past. Actually, there might be another one there. Yes, please do come and speak to us. This is one of the wonderful things about just sitting still, because I think you then become part of the habitat, and they'll come a little closer. You can really see the tail stream of this one here.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah, so that was fascinating to hear you speak about the roseate terns at the Members' Day. I don't know, I think they have been sighted back this year, but they haven't been seen breeding at all.
Yes, from what I know, they have been seen. There were reports of, I think it might have been the male roseate tern, I mean, I might be wrong, on the lagoon. But sadly, there was no sign of the other one. So I think that it may have come here remembering from last year. I'm not sure if it was the same bird. But yeah, it didn't look like breeding was going to happen, and all the other terns have been nesting and have raised some successful young, so I don't think the roseate terns will be this year.
No, and also we're about a year to the day from when the first young was seen, so they would already have had to have bred by this point. As a young birder, have you connected with any other young birders?
I mean, growing up, I always thought that I was the only one that had this passion, because it's not something that's encouraged in schools. Like, I didn't find anyone that had the same passion as me. But I was lucky enough to join our Wild New Forest, which is a not-for-profit company that works in the New Forest showing nature, and they have a young person's section as well. And through that, I've been able to meet so many people who are enthusiastic as wildlife as me, with loads of young birders as well who are equally as passionate and also younger and almost so much more knowledgeable. And also HOS as well, the Hampshire Ornithological Society, of course, has such a good young members group, which has also allowed me to connect. I've met so many more people from there as well who also have the same experience of birding and being outdoors. And there is quite a few challenges. I think being influenced by older birders around us as well, sometimes I feel like we get put down a lot because older birders think that we're not as knowledgeable or don't like seeing a young birder who may be as interested or knowledgeable as them. And so often it feels like they're putting us down. But that's not for every birder. It's just a select few individuals which have done it in the past. But I know other people have experienced the same way when I've been talking to my other friends who are birders. So it's something that I think really does need to be addressed, and for young birders to remember that they're not the only one, and that their passion does count, and that their knowledge also does count. And no matter what other people may tell them, they still have that knowledge, and it's not a reason to be put off that passion, because birding is something that everyone should enjoy and everyone should share and want to have equally. As I said, being a young birder, we do get put down knowledge-wise, but especially for a female young birder, I think that we're naturally thought to not be as knowledgeable or as interested or because, say, the older male birders perhaps know more than they think we do, but really it's not down to who we are, what gender we are, or what we look like, but the fact that we are still passionate about it, and no one's different from that, because if you look around at all the beautiful birds, how can we not all love it together? That's my views on it.
Yeah, I think it is changing, and shout out to Keith Betton. He was on one of the previous episodes telling us about how he'd put the initiative in place for the young birders and how he's been connecting with other bird clubs around the UK to encourage them to think about creating a young birder programme. I know that he arranges lots of experiences, so going out birding, but also things like having the opportunity to see ringing. And I know you're really active. I don't know whether that's come through being part of HOS, but you've mentioned that you do bird ringing and you do bird surveys. So can you tell me a little bit about the extra things that you've got involved in?
Yeah, definitely. So bird ringing, I was lucky enough to become a bird ringer. So this is where we catch birds, and it's all for science, so all for BTO data, so the British Trust for Ornithology. It doesn't harm the birds at all. We'll catch them in mist nets or bush nets, so there's loads of different types of ringing. And basically we apply a little metal ring to their legs, which has a unique identification code, so if they're caught again, they'll be able to see where the birds have come and been from. And it's just bird ringing, I think, is a great way to see birds up close in the hand. I mean, you always look at birds out in the field and you think, oh wow, it looks quite big, or you can't really see a lot of the detail, or it may just look like a little brown bird, say like a dunnock or something. But really, when you get them in the hand, I mean, for starters, they're much smaller because they're all feathers. But also, you get to see every single detail on the bird. So incorporating like all the different kind of patterns, and some bird species even have like more glossy kind of feathers than you'd expect. It gives you a whole new look on it, whilst also that having the passion as well when you're enjoying the bird, but also feeling like you're doing something for conservation as well, because the only way we're going to know about these birds in the future is through things like ringing efforts. But aside from ringing, also getting to take part in surveys. So through HOS as well, I was lucky enough to be able to take part in the sand martin survey. So every year, the sand martins, they nest along the cliffs at Barton-on-Sea, which is where I live. So getting to go down and actually watch them all the time is always fantastic. But when I took part in the sand martin survey, we were actually taking more kind of specific notes about their behaviours as well, which is also, again, for kind of science purposes. So it's the enjoyment in science which really makes it all worthwhile. And also getting to take part in the wetland bird survey, so WEBS, which I'm actually going to be going down and doing with my mum in a minute, is being able to count all the birds in a specific patch. So I've got Keyhaven Lagoon and the area around there. And although I only started that this year, it's been very interesting to learn more about the numbers of the bird species that we get around, whilst also seeing what species you have, and also comparing at different times of year, when you've had the waterfowl during the winter, but also the summer birds, so like the terns and things at this time of year. So yeah, like I said, it's just that balance of enjoyment along with knowing that you're doing something for science.
I know you've set up a group at school about conservation, is it?
So I really wanted to allow younger people to connect. So I decided to set up a conservation club, and it's on Monday lunchtimes at school, and we've now probably got around, 15 people who join. And it's great because you see young people's enthusiasm. And I know that I did get to connect through HOS and Wild New Forest through young people there. But when it's just in your school, you suddenly realise how many people there are that are passionate. So it just gives me relief to know that there are still people who will want to help the planet for future generations, and that means a lot to me, especially in a society where people are overtaken by phones and forgetting about climate change, which is a big issue right now. And also because things like environmental sciences, they aren't taught in schools, even though I really think they should be, because it's one of the biggest challenges that we're facing on the planet, and yet I don't think people understand the importance of having it taught to us at a young age when we are kind of developing that interest. So yeah, I think it just needs to happen in more places. So I wanted to start small to hopefully spark the interest of other young people.
Oh, well, I really congratulate you on doing that, because, yeah, when you look around, it can feel a bit like, what have we done? So to know that the future is hopefully in good hands, I really applaud you on that. Where do you see yourself going in the future? Will nature become part of your life once you leave school or university?
Definitely, nature is where I am aiming for. So a career in conservation, I think, is definitely something I'm looking for. In university, I'm probably going to take a zoology degree. And from there, I think all I really want to do is anything outdoors, which is going to help with the future for future generations. I want to help preserve the planet as much as I can. That means all the species around. I've even thought about, well, I've always said to people that have asked me what I want to do when I'm older, to become the next David Attenborough. That's where I kind of aim, which is a broad scale, but I know that's where I want to go.
Well, I hope I'm still around to see that. Is there a particular birding moment that's brought you great joy?
Oh, there are so many different birding experiences. I think one of my favourite was actually when I was ringing. I mean, not only each year do we get to go out tern ringing as well here at Normandy Lagoon, but also earlier I mentioned the kingfisher. And I remember bird ringing once, and it was when I had just started. A kingfisher had flown into the net, and at the time I was mesmerised by it, because I finally got to see one of my favourite birds, such an elusive bird as well, up close in the hand. And that's always stayed with me, because not only is it such a beautiful bird, but it also has like a robotic head movement, so it will turn its head from side to side really slowly, and it's just crazy. But at the time when I saw it, I know I wasn't able to ring it because I was too young, I'd only just started. But I did get to release it, so I got to hold my favourite bird. I didn't want to let it go, but I knew I had to. And I opened my hand, and it just sat there in the palm of my hand, and it just stayed there for a while until I had to kind of jiggle it so that way it'd fly away. And that's always stayed with me, because a bird that's usually so quick to fly whenever anyone walks by, and it was just sat there in the palm of my hand, and it was fantastic.
Oh, magical moment. It's like that real connection that you had, the Disney princess moment that I was talking about earlier, where I would love that, just hold my hand and a bird would come and choose to be with me. If you had a fantasy birding day, so a day where you could go anywhere in the world at any time period, if you want to go back and see dodos, that's fine too.
Oh, that'd be lovely.
You've got a day just to spend however you want to do, doing whatever you want to do, but with birds. What would you do? Where would you go? What would you see?
I mean, getting back to go and see the dodos would be amazing, but I think in this time period I would love to go to Papua New Guinea to see the birds of paradise. Although they'd be very hard to spot, I mean, I'd love to go there when I could watch them doing their courtship dances, because that's something that's always fascinated me, like watching them on the David Attenborough documentaries, bouncing around with all their beautiful colours, and that's always something that I've dreamed of going to see. That's how I spend my day.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Amy, for being part of the show, and I hope we'll get to speak to you again about some of your other exploits in a future episode.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great, and lovely just to sit here as well, talking about birds while watching birds. So thank you.
After Amy and her mother left us to set up for their breeding bird survey, John and I spoke to another couple of birders who said they'd been seeing roseate terns over the lagoon. This was probably while I was speaking to Amy, and we totally missed them. The presentation on the roseate terns given by Amy at the HOS Members' Day is available on YouTube. The link to this and the other presentations from the day is in the episode notes. According to the eBird hotspot list for Normandy Lagoon, 5 types of terns have been recorded there: sandwich, common, little, roseate and arctic. All the terns mentioned have an overall white or pale grey plumage with a black crown, pointed wings, a pointed bill and a swallow-like tail. Immature birds have white foreheads. They have a bouncy, floaty flight pattern and often hover over the water before either plunging or dipping down to catch fish. They are summer visitors, so we generally see them in breeding plumage, although some sandwich terns do overwinter here. They nest in noisy colonies, often sharing the area with black-headed gulls. Telling the various species apart can be tricky, as identification is largely based on bill colour, head pattern and call. Inexperienced birders may mistake the flight pattern and calls with those of black-headed gulls, and I've definitely done that in the past. Here's an example of the calls of both common tern and black-headed gull as an example. This is a common tern, and this is a black-headed gull. It doesn't help that common terns often nest in similar spots on reserves, along with black-headed gulls. Here's a brief description of the different types of terns seen in Hampshire. Sandwich terns. I find these one of the easier terns to identify. They are the largest of our terns, similar to the size of a black-headed gull, and have a black bill with a yellow tip. When perched on the ground, it may be possible to see a shaggy crest at the back of the black crown. Common tern. Slightly smaller than the sandwich tern and more slender than a black-headed gull. They have a black crown and red bill with a black tip. Sandwich terns and common terns are the most commonly found terns in Hampshire, with several hundred pairs breeding each year. Little terns, as their name implies, are the smallest of our terns. I find these quite easy to identify both from their size and from the white forehead they have in their breeding plumage. They have yellow bills with a black tip, and hover gracefully over water before diving in to catch their prey. Only a handful of little terns breed in Hampshire each year. And it's only a couple of years ago that I saw my very first little tern, and that was at the Lymington and Keyhaven Reserve. Roseate terns are one of our rarest breeding seabirds. As Amy described, there is only one regular breeding colony of roseate terns, and that's in northern England, off the Northumberland coast, on Coquette Island. So we were extremely fortunate to have a successful breeding pair in Hampshire last year. They look very similar to common terns, but in breeding plumage have a rosy blush on the breast and long tail streamers. The bill is longer than that of the common tern and is black in spring, with a red base that develops during the summer. Although it's described as having a rosy blush and long tail streamers, we actually found it pretty difficult to identify the roseate tern, whether in flight or on the ground, and were only able to do so with the help of more knowledgeable birders nearby, so my thanks to them. Once we had identified it, we could indeed see the difference in the beak colour. Arctic terns are rarely seen in Hampshire, but large numbers breed in the north of Britain. Like the common tern, they're slender, elegant birds, and a similar size. They have slightly longer wings than the common tern and a bright red bill. The red legs of Arctic terns are noticeably shorter than common terns when perched, and they also have longer tail streamers. I found their similarities can make it difficult to be certain of the ID. We were recently in Shetland, where breeding Arctic terns are abundant. However, common terns are also found there, and there were still times when I couldn't be sure which species I was seeing. Perhaps that's why the local term in Shetland, Tyrrwch, applies to both species. I did spend quite a lot of time photographing and videoing the terns in the hopes that I might be able to identify them afterwards, but I'm still not certain that I've got it right in every case. Whereas most of the other terns winter in Africa, Arctic terns make extremely long migrations and spend October to March as far south as Antarctica. I do love to hear what birds you've been seeing, so send me a message on the contact page on my website, casualbirder.com. I can't wait to hear from you. And don't forget we have the Casual Birder Bird Club, which I host monthly online. Would you like to be part of it? With regular attendees from the UK, Germany, Canada, and sometimes Australia, we share our recent bird sightings, and every few months we have sessions where we can share our photographs. We've also got some upcoming special guest presentations, so if you've ever thought about joining us, why not join our email list to receive the notifications? And I want to give a shout out to our wonderful Casual Birder community hosted on Circle. With really friendly and knowledgeable members, it's our space to share trip reports, photos, ask questions of the community, and just hang out. Details are in the episode notes. We'd love to have you join us. My thanks to Randy Braun for designing the artwork for the show. The theme music is Short Sleeve Shirt by The Drones. Thanks to them for letting me use it. Check out their website at dronesmusic.net. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you'll join me again for another episode of the Casual Birder podcast.